Hey guys, if you're thinking of installing landscape lighting on your own or hiring somebody to do it this year, hopefully this video will help you. I'm going to walk you through how to install low voltage landscape lighting and show you how easy it can be. Talk about the different kind of light fixtures that are out there and the different tips and tools that you can use to save you a whole bunch of time and a whole bunch of money. I'm going to walk you through some different lighting techniques so that you can get the best bang for your buck out of the lights that you buy. I'm going to also talk to you about some things that you should know before you buy any landscape lights. So I hope that you guys enjoy this video. And as always, if you have questions, email them to me at cal@lightingdoctor.ca or leave a comment below this video and I'd be happy to answer those. Enjoy the video, guys. Hey guys, it's Cal from the Lighting Doctor. Today we're going to quickly show you how to install low voltage landscape lighting and get into what kind of lights you can use with our do-it-yourself kit. So please stay tuned after the video to learn more about our do-it-yourself landscape lighting kits. First step in installing landscape lighting is determining what kind of lights you're going to use. Up and accent lighting is the most popular, commonly used for highlighting trees and different structures around their property. Wash lighting is great for lighting the exterior of homes and featuring and casting shadows on beautiful stonework around the property. Path and garden lighting also very popular for lighting pathways and gardens and different features around the property. And finally, hardscape lighting is another popular light commonly used around barbecue areas, fences, decks, steps, and so on. A great way to determine what's going to look good on your property is simply by taking a flashlight at night and going and highlighting and shining it on different features and structures around your landscape to see what's going to look great. Another tip or shortcut is to use a 9-volt battery. If you already have landscape lights, just hook the wires up to the terminals and you should be able to light those to see what looks great. When choosing your lights, something we recommend is using really high quality incandescent and halogen fixtures and retrofitting them with energy efficient LED technology bulbs that will not only save you money on power, but will also last pretty much the life of your fixture so that you're not having to change bulbs on a yearly basis. Just want to explain a little bit about the transformers, so basically the brains of your system. After you've placed your lights and you know what kind of lights you're going to use, the next step is determining what size transformer you're going to use. So a real simple way to do this, and if you're using a good quality light, when you buy it, it'll usually tell you how many watts that fixture is actually going to produce. If not, it'll usually tell you, if you actually look on the bulb, it'll tell you if it's 4.5 watts, 5.5 watts. Typically for LED, that's about as big as you're going to get, but on the box it should say how many watts if you're buying a good quality fixture. So, you know, on this project we've got 10 lights. Each of these lights uses approximately 4.5 watts, so 10 times 4.5 is 45 watts. So we want to size our transformer just slightly bigger than that. The better quality light that you have, the less you got to oversize your transformer. If you're using a really cheap light or a low quality light, you probably want to give yourself a little bit more room because the light's going to actually use more power than that might actually say. With a good quality fixture, you're pretty safe if you just oversize it a little bit. So we're going to use a 60-watt transformer here from Kichler, which is really simple to use. It's got a small timer on it as well as a photo cell, and you can see we basically just mounted it to the side of the house here with a couple screws. And once we get all our wire laid out, we're going to wire those into here. And then something we've done to kind of take it to the next level and make this Wi-Fi is we've added something called it's from Weon. It's a outdoor Wi-Fi timer switch that we use with a lot of our transformers, as well as you can use it with Christmas lights or whatever. And how we use this is basically we just plug this into our GFCI receptacle, and then we plug our transformer directly into that. And then from there, now we can run all our lights from a simple mobile app from Weon. And we do this a lot of the time. It just gives us that flexibility, and it's a cool way to add Wi-Fi to your system. Okay, so we're just wiring up our lights here now. My favorite connectors to use here is these snap lock connectors. They're super easy to use. They hold the wires tight. They're gel filled, so they keep it completely waterproof. Usually what I do is after we've got the wire ran out, I usually leave a little bit of a loop at every light so that if we need to move it or make any changes or anything like that, we've got some extra room to play with. And simply just
cutting into our wire, coming in and going out. Strip the ends of that, just an inch or two, just enough so we can get it into the snap lock connectors. And then we'll also have our 2 wires that go to our fixture. So in this case, we've actually got an in-ground fixture that we're using. So we've got that, and we've got the wires there. So just twist off the ends so we can get them in nice and clean to our snap lock connectors. And these snap lock connectors that we're using here are pretty much good from 18 gauge wire all the way to 10 gauge low voltage wire. So what you do is they just open up. There's a couple ports on the bottom. You've got your wire coming in, goes into one. Push it right to the end. You've got your wire going out, goes into the other port. And then you've got your fixture wire, goes into the last port. And then you snap that tight, and you can see those wires aren't coming loose. And then you do that with your other set of wires. Open it up. You got your fixture wire, it goes in one. Your wire coming in goes into another, and your wire going out into the last port. And then that just snaps tight. And again, those wires are nice and sealed. Take any extra wire, just put it down on the bottom, place your fixture, and you're good to go. So we've got our lights placed, we've got our transformer hooked up, all our wiring connections are done. Now we're just testing the lights. So we've tested everything, turned on the transformer. All our lights work. I always recommend doing that before you go and start finally burying everything. But since that's all done, we know all our lights work. Last thing is we're just going to bury all our extra wire, and we're going to place and set our lights. And if there's any final little adjustments to be done, we'll do those. I recommend coming back at night when you actually have the lights on. You can see how everything looks, to come back and make any last minute adjustments, just to make sure that everything looks good. But once you've done that, that's pretty much it. Now your landscape lighting system is ready to go.
Hey guys, it's Cal with the Lighting Doctor. I'm just going to talk about 3 things really quickly when you go out and buy low voltage landscape lighting. These are some things that you should be looking at. If you're on our website and looking at our kits, all this stuff is kind of factored in. But if you're buying lights from a big box store or somewhere else, 3 things you want to look at is, the first is color temperature. So color temperature, I often get asked, if I'm buying an LED light, is it going to be that cool white light that most LEDs are? But nowadays with the technology, most of the LED lights you buy are actually that warm color, incandescent yellow light that we're used to. And how to tell if it is if you look at the color temperature on the box and it says between 2700 and 3000 K, which is Kelvin temperature, that's that warm white color that you're looking for. 4000 K, that's the LED bright cool white color that you're used to. So again, if you're looking at to get like that yellow light like you see here, 2700 to 3000 Kelvin is where you want to do that. Next thing I'll talk about is lumens. Lumens is really just the brightness of the actual light. So if you're looking at a good quality bullet light or uplighting fixture like this, you're typically going to find them between 220 and 270 lumens. A lot of the stuff that you find in the store, the solar lights that have the big panel on them, the highest I've seen is like 160 lumens, which is not horrible, but you're going to have trouble lighting anything much more than 6 to 8 feet at that amount. So 220 to 270, that's a good, that's kind of your most standard out there. That's what you'll find in a good quality uplight. For a path light, something like this, it's going to be a little bit less. You're probably looking at between 120 and 170 lumens for a good quality light. Again, a lot of the stuff you find in the stores might be like 50 to 70 lumens, which is not going to do a real good job of lighting anything.
And the other thing I found that plays into factor even more so much than the lumens on a path and garden light is the actual height of it, right? The lower it is, the smaller that area that it's actually going to light is going to be. So if you can get a light that's at least 12 inches, if not 18 inches, and it doesn't look weird in the landscape, it's going to light a lot larger area, which you might pay a little bit more for that light, but in the long run, you're going to save money because you don't need to buy as many lights to light up that same area. So just a quick little tip about height and lumens. And then the last thing is beam angle. So beam angle, I'm specifically talking pretty much just about uplights. Most of them, and pretty common and standard, you're going to find them between 25 and 30 degrees, which is going to do a pretty good job of lighting most of the features that you're looking at. But say you're trying to get, say you're trying to light the top of a flagpole. Well, a light like this might not quite get up there, but if you use a smaller beam angle, say 10 degrees, that light's actually going to shoot farther up that flagpole now. So the narrower you get, the further that light shoots. And you know, same thing opposite. The wider you get, the less far that's going to shoot. You know, an example is, you know, a house we did. It was a beautiful house. It was along the highway. We wanted to highlight the side of that house, so we used a couple wash lights, which are wider than this. They have a 120 degree beam spread, which did a great job of lighting the whole house with just two of them. The one thing we didn't consider into or factor in is that at 120 degrees, that light's not going quite as high, so we didn't quite get that light up to the peak of that house. So what we had to do is put brighter lights in, so we get the same beam spread, but now we could get that light to the top. So something to consider when you're looking at lights and beam spread. The tighter the angle, the farther that light's going to shoot. So hopefully that helps. You know, come and visit us at lightingdoctor.ca. Subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the little guy in the corner there. And by all means, send me an email, cal@lightingdoctor.ca, or your comments and questions. We love getting your feedback. Thanks so much for watching.
Hey guys, this is going to be a little bit longer video, but what I'm going to cover is I'm going to talk quickly about some of the most popular lighting fixtures, how to use them, show you some examples of what you can do with the different kinds of lights, and then lastly just some helpful hints and tips to make your life that much easier when you decide to install your own landscape lighting system. So the first light I'm going to talk about is your uplight, spotlight. Accent light has a bunch of different names. I tend to call it the accent light because that's exactly what it's designed to do, is accent some type of feature on your home or in your landscape. And they basically all kind of look the same with some slightly different features and stuff, but they're all meant to do the same thing. And one thing I will say about these, and what we tend to typically do, is you can get two kinds of these. You can get basically like a drop-in fixture or an integrated fixture. So what an integrated fixture is nowadays, it's a light like this that has the LED board built into it, which basically means you can't change that out. And LED is going to last you 10 to 15 years. Any good quality light is going to last you 10 to 15 years as an LED. The one thing, and I'm not going to talk too much about halogen at all in this video because it just doesn't make any sense anymore. It's like trying to explain how a rotary phone works when nobody uses them anymore because now we have cell phones. That's what LED is not only does it save you power, you're not changing bulbs every year. The biggest thing I find is it makes your life way easier when you're designing a system because you don't have to worry about all the garbage like voltage drop and all that kind of stuff that you see videos on YouTube of from 10, 15 years ago. And any contractor that's still using halogen is crazy, and the only reason they're using it is because it's way cheaper. Just like lights in your house are cheaper if you're still using, you know, the old ones as opposed to when you integrate to, or sorry, when you retrofit to LEDs. So that's all I'm going to say about halogen. The one thing to keep in mind is that if you do have a system and you have a 20 watt halogen lamp in your fixture, that's about the equivalent of a 4.5 watt LED. And if you have a 35 watt halogen, that is the equivalent of approximately a 5.5 watt LED. So you can see there's a huge difference there. That's using 20 watts and that's using 4 watts. And it just keeps getting better. The better the technology, the lower this number gets. So it makes it easy to design because now, excuse me, now, you know, if you had 10, 20 watt halogen bulbs before, that's 200 watts. You start to need a pretty big transformer. Whereas now I can have 20 lights at 4 watts, and that's under
do the math there. That's under 100 watts. So you can get a much smaller transformer. So just stick with LED and save yourself some headaches. And if you have a halogen system, you can easily go and retrofit most systems. If it was put in by a professional and it wasn't some rinky-dink operation, chances are you're going to easily be able to retrofit that with some kind of drop-in LED bulb. The one question I do get asked often about LED is, well, yeah, what's the color though? And because they think it's that bright white that gets associated with LED. Well, in most cases now, the LED bulbs they come standard at 2700 or 3000 Kelvin, and all that is that's the temperature color, which means basically that's that warm yellow that you're used to seeing. The higher this number gets, the whiter the light is. So if you see 4000 Kelvin, that's closer to that white LED light that you're accustomed to seeing. But you can save a lot of money by doing this and just buying a really good quality halogen fixture, and then really just tossing the halogen bulb out of it and retrofitting it with a good quality LED bulb. You might not get the same warranty that a lot of the manufacturers will give on an integrated one, because then they control all the components, but you're still going to get that bulb and that fixture to last 10 to 15 years if you're spending the proper amount of money and going with a good brand and a good quality one. And then the other reason I like doing that is because it gives me more design options once the lights are in the ground. So for example, if I put this light in, say on a small tree, and I buy an integrated fixture that has a 35-degree beam spread, well, I might find out after I have that light in the ground that I don't need it to be that wide of an angle, and I want it narrower to really just highlight the stem of that tree. Well, then I can just go and switch out this bulb to something that's maybe 10 degrees or 25 degrees and really sharpen up that angle. Same thing if I want it wider, right? I might put it along a house to highlight a feature, and I find that 25 or 36 degrees is not as wide as I would like it. I can just go and then switch out that bulb to maybe a 60 degree and get a bigger width on that and cover more area. So I like doing that, because if it's an integrated fixture and you want to change it after the fact, well, you basically have to replace the whole fixture. So hopefully that makes sense. And just show you some examples here of uplighting, and this is commonly what you'll see is just uplighting some accent trees or whatever. What I do like about what they've done here is, because it is close to the patio, you do get a lot of reflection off this foliage back down onto the patio, which means you can potentially eliminate some path lighting. Example here, again, they're using it on some bigger trees. In some cases you might have to use a slightly brighter light if you have really tall trees, and then on shrubs and areas like this, and this would be an area where maybe you've got to use a slightly wider angle lens in it, because you don't need it to shoot super high, you want it to shoot wider. And remember one thing, the wider the angle is, the less height you're going to get on that light. So something to keep in mind. So just some examples there. Again, another example of how they've integrated some path lighting with some uplighting in this case. And then here's a good example, again, both with path lighting and uplighting. The reason I want to show this picture is because you see how these trees overhang here? When they're full of foliage, you can get that light up in there, and you're going to get a lot of reflection off of that back down onto the patio, where in this case they probably could have used a lot less path lights, because they're going to get a lot of reflection off of here. So something to keep in mind. Again, if you're working on a budget or don't want to light up like crazy, that's something you can think about. And then the reason I chose this one is just because you want to try and avoid this and just make sure that you don't have light shining directly in your eyes. So wherever you're going to be looking at it, try and keep that light pointed away, or have some kind of special shroud on it that keeps the light out of your eyes and featured on what exactly you're trying to highlight. This is a great example here, because in this one, they're doing two things that I really like. Is one, they're featuring and accenting the house, which I think is probably the first thing you should do with landscape lighting. Before you go and put it on any trees or anything, focus on your house first. That's the thing that costs you the most money, you spend the most money on. And when people go and buy your house, you want to increase your curb appeal, that's what they're going to notice, is your house. It's going to stand out. So here's an example of how they used it to create some nice texturing on this rock work. You don't need to have, you know, this fancy rock work and texturing to do that. Even on, you know, houses with siding, just having that light shine and feature that house makes a huge difference. And then here, what I like is instead of lining the driveway with a bunch of path lights, they've used an uplight here to highlight this tree and then also get some reflection back down onto the driveway. It's a great way to do two things with one light. And last I heard, most cars have headlights on them, so you don't need to spend a whole bunch of money trying to highlight this whole big driveway area. Really good example here of how they've used uplighting to showcase and feature this house. I love how they've gotten it right up to the tops of the peaks, how they've really done that entranceway and the accent lighting in between the windows and everything. This is what landscape lighting should look like. So you should focus on this before I think you even focus on the trees and different areas like that. And then I just want to show you this one because this is a great example of how they've used it to cast some shadows, and all they've really done here is they've just placed an uplight further behind these trees. So now again, they're highlighting the tree and they're creating some shadowing on their house. So another example of how they're doing two things with one light. And then this is probably the most economical and the best bang for your buck value that you can use out of any light is it's called moonlighting or downlighting, and it's the technique of using a light up in a high area in a tree, something like this, and shining it down. And what that does is now you're highlighting the trunk and the base of this tree, you're highlighting the foliage, you're highlighting the ground cover, and you're casting shadows through the branches down onto the street, which is also great because in the wintertime, when you don't have as much up here to feature, you're still creating some cool effects. With one light now, you can go and accomplish what might have taken you 4 or 5 lights. So easily, best bang for your buck. Yes, it's more work to get it up there. You'll need some kind of special mount that you can use so that as that tree grows, you can leave some slack on that light, as well as the wire. You got to make sure to leave some slack and run it there, but still make it secure. There is ways to do that very easily. There's a little bit more maintenance for these, but as you can see, you can accomplish a lot of things with just one light. The next most popular light that I'm going to talk about, and again is used all the time, is path and garden lighting. And I think in a lot of cases it gets overutilized. There's definitely some places that you can use it and it is very beneficial. But I think in a lot of cases it gets used more than it could, and you can achieve a lot of the same effects or better effects using some different forms of lighting. But I will talk about them. And a couple things, again, you know, a lot of times what we do in this case is you can buy the LED integrated ones where the board is built right in there. Again, just cost wise, I like finding a really good fixture that I know is going to work and just retrofitting it with a good LED bulb that, again, I can choose the preferences of that and I know is still going to last a really long time. The one thing I would say to make sure that any path light that you're going to buy, make sure that this lamp, and I don't care if it's an integrated board or if it's a pop-in, drop-in lamp like this, make sure it's concealed from the elements, because if you have, if it's open and exposed, it's going to die and wear out that much quicker. I don't care if it's an integrated fixture or not. So, you know, in a case like this, it's completely sealed off, but you can't see the light. It's got waterproof seals on it, so I know a light like this is going to last a long time. And I often get asked about, well, how far do you space out path lights? And it really depends on preference. The one thing I will say is, I mean, you don't need to light up a runway. You're not trying to land an airplane, so you don't need to, you know, load your property with path lights. Just stagger them to your preference on what looks good. A general rule of thumb is if you have something around a 12-inch height, you're probably 8 to 10 to maybe 12 feet spread on those is how far that light's going to shine on the ground. The darker the ground cover, the less
distance that that light is going to spread, because it's going to get absorbed by the ground. The lighter the ground cover is, the more spread you're going to get on that light. And then the other thing to keep in mind is stem is also very important in determining how far you want that light to go. So more so than the brightness of this bulb, which most are going to pretty much come pretty standard at what I would say is 170 lumens or 2.5 watts. Any good one will be like that. If you see a very cheap version at one of the big box stores, look on it, you're probably going to see a lumen count of about 50 or 70 lumens. All that is the brightness of the bulb. And a good path light should be at least 150 lumens to be effective. But more so than that is the stem height. If you get a 12-inch, you can probably, which means a light that's 12 inches off the ground, you're probably going to get that to spread, like I said, 8 to maybe 12 feet. If you have a 18-inch stem, you're probably going to extend that to 10 to maybe 14 feet. If you have a 6-inch or an 8-inch stem, well, you can think of that, you're going to get a lot less. You might only get 4 feet or 6 feet of spread. So again, when you're shopping for these lights, make sure, especially at the big box stores, what you'll typically find is they're 6 to 8 inches off the ground. They're only about 50 to 70 lumens, and people always wonder, well, how come this light is so much more expensive than what I saw at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever it was? It's because quality and the stuff that's there, I'll be honest with you, it's for the most part is garbage. So just to give you a little idea there. So here's an example of how I've just integrated both path lighting to help light some ground cover and patio areas with some uplighting to uplight some trees, but then still get that light down onto the pathway. So it's good when it works in combination and you don't have excessive amounts of path lights all along this whole walkway here, which one's going to cost you way more money and it's not going to look quite as nice. Again, they are great in gardens and stuff, to light little stone rivers and stuff when you don't have the option of maybe putting a down light or you don't have a lot to reflect the light off of. It is a great way to just light up that ground cover or a walkway area. As you can see here, again, they haven't littered the pathway with a whole bunch of lights. They've spread them out a good distance, probably 12 feet or so of distance, and they've staggered them from side to side because you don't need it to be this bright everywhere. You just want to make sure that you can see the pathway and see those stepping stones so you avoid obviously any injury, but also so it looks nice too. Again, just great ways to highlight different types of foliage and stuff. And then the one thing I would say is, as much as possible, it does look good if you can stagger them more, and you will find that light, you just get a better use of that light. But for maintenance reasons, you want to try as much as possible, keep them off areas that you're going to have to maintain, like grass areas, because here now you're going to have to mow and trim around these, and that's just going to cause these to get busted and broken that much sooner, as well as it just wastes your time. So what I would say is, as much as possible, either try and have some type of border around this that you can place these so you don't have to maintain them, or just try and keep your lights out of those areas just to avoid headaches for yourself, and try and find different ways that maybe you can light these pathways. So maybe in this case there might have been some trees up here that they could have threw some down lights and lit from above. Who knows? But again, just remember that you are going to have to do a lot more maintenance when you have it in a grass area like that. Another area I like to use path lighting when I don't really have an option to maybe throw a downlight or something, an uplight that's really going to catch most of this rock, is using them to reflect light off of features like this, like rocks, because now the light hits that and then you can see that it really spreads a long ways, lights a bunch of the foliage. So I love using it in areas where you have like big boulders and stuff like this. Obviously you see them in stairways and stuff all the time, but again, I would just be careful. You don't need a whole ton. You can usually achieve the same thing just by staggering them, in a respectful manner and using them sparsely. You can always add lights on later on. I always recommend try with less first and add on down the road if you want more light.
Another light that I'm going to talk about is wash lighting. I talked about this a little bit earlier on. All it is basically like an uplight or an accent light, but it has a much larger spread on it. So 120 degrees is pretty common, as well as it has a frosted lens. So all this means is it's going to create less hot spots. So these are great lights to use to highlight and feature your house, especially if you have a big area on your house, a big wall that you want to use. So in this case, here they probably use just some regular uplights or accent lights, but on an area like this where it's a wider area, this is where you can use one of those wash lights, and it's really going to spread that light over that whole area. Just keep in mind that, again, the wider the spread is, the less height you're going to get on that light, so you might just need to use a brighter wash light in an area like this. I'll talk about this in a second, but this is another great option. Say you have an area like this where you have something that you want to feature, but you don't have an area where you can put an uplight that's not going to require a lot of maintenance. These in-ground lights are a great solution for that. But continuing on wash lights, they are great for creating those that texturing on any rock faces and stuff that you might have, because it has that frosted lens and it does create less hot spots. It does a better job of creating this this texturing effect. So in-ground lights, well lights, whatever you want to call them, are basically this. They're lights that are designed to live in the ground. So they typically do cost more, but in an area where you have grass around it and you're going to have to maintain around it, instead of having an uplight sticking up that you're going to have to mow around and trim around, something that goes flush in the ground like this that you can just mow right over is a great option. And it basically will do the same thing as an uplight. You just have less maintenance on it. The reason you don't have to use this all the time is because it does cost a little bit more. So if you have an area that is maintenance free, I would still go with an up or an accent light. But if you're stuck in the grass, that's a good option. Downlighting, really, again, if you have a really good quality accent light, you can use it in a lot of downlighting applications. Just make sure that it does really keep out the elements. Most downlights do have a longer shroud. Again, it just keeps that light out of your eyes a little bit more, and it's built to really have the water run off of it so it doesn't get into that fixture. But it will achieve the same thing like we talked about with those accent lights, is creating that moonlighting effect. And if you really want to create that moonlighting effect, using a blue filtered lens does a really good job of that. And here's just some examples of some different downlighting. You can see how they've used it here to really get some light down on this pathway. This would have taken more path lights than these guys could have probably fit in here to achieve the same effect. Again, just different ways of lighting the stairs, right? Again, instead of a bunch of path lights, they have some downlighting here that does the same effect, and it makes this area look great, as well as covers a whole bunch of ground cover with just one light. And as we talked about before, creating that shadowing and casting effect down on the ground is another great option as well. So I'm also a big fan of hardscape lighting and wall lighting and deck lighting, but in particular this kind of style. There is a lot of step lighting and wall lighting that say it would just fit into the concrete like this. It gets molded in, but then you have this bright light shining right at you as you're walking up these stairs. What I like about this is it usually hides pretty inconspicuously under a cap or something, and then the light shines down where it's supposed to and not in your eyes. So I love these lights for stairs, for barbecue pit areas, anywhere where you've got stonework like this, on fences, on decks, under railings on decks. They work great too for lighting up the deck, but then the light's hidden and it's not shining in your eye. There's so much deck lighting out there that I really don't like, because a couple things. One, you'll see a lot of the rope lighting, which in some cases can look good, but in my opinion it still just looks like you're at a 70s disco. And then there's a lot of deck lighting that just sits right on the edge and then just shines right in your eye. And again, that's not what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to highlight or feature an area. You don't necessarily want to see that light directly in your eyes. And just some examples of how you can use these lights. And again, because you're not wasting any light now, it's not shining just out into space, it's shining down on the ground. It can be a great way to light up some ground cover as well, and again, avoid having to use a bunch of path lighting. Underwater lights, I don't need to talk too much about these. They're pretty self-explanatory. They're designed to live under the water, and all I would say is do not skimp on these. Cheap ones will not last you long because, I mean, you got to think about it. They got to work underwater, and electricity and water typically do not go well. So make sure you spend money and go with a well-known manufacturer on any underwater lights that you use. But if you do, they can create some amazing looking effects. If you have any waterfalls or pond features in your home, I would highly recommend considering them. Alright guys, just wrapping up here, we just want to show you some examples of the difference between having landscape lighting and not having landscape lighting, and the difference between when you go and buy a good quality landscape lighting as opposed to what you will find on the shelves at most of your big box stores. So here's just an example of, you know, what an area looks like, obviously during the daytime, but I know for a fact that on this house they spent a lot of money on landscaping, and at night when it gets dark, this is a little bit out of town, so there's no lights whatsoever, so it is pitch black at this house. You know, and just by adding some landscape lighting to really go and feature a bunch of different trees, a bunch of different colors, some beautiful patios and sidewalks that they had done, that it almost looks like a river at night because you get the reflection of the light off the nice concrete, and really just how we took a yard that looks beautiful in the daytime and we made it look great at night as well. And again, without the lighting, all this just disappears at night, and it's just a shame to have a beautiful house and a beautiful landscape like this, whether it's $1 million house or a $50,000 house, doesn't matter. I mean, your home is where you spend the majority of your time, so why not make it look great? And then to show you really the difference between what you get when you go and find a good manufacturer's light, you know, somebody who designs landscape lighting systems for professional landscape lighting installers. There's lots of great companies out there, Kichler, FX Luminaire, Vista, and there's so many more. But you can see here, there's an obvious difference between what one light here will do as opposed to what you would buy in the big box store. And some of you might say, well, yeah, but that's more light than we need. And the point is that you need a lot more of these lights to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve on your property than you do with a good quality light. So yes, this might be 30, 40, even 50% cheaper than this one, but you're going to need a lot more of these to accomplish the exact same thing that you would had you just gone and got a good quality fixture to start with. And I will tell you, this will last you 5 times as long as this one, just from experience, because we go and repair these ones all the time. And then, you know, further to that, comparing to a solar landscape light that you can see really doesn't do much of a job at all. And although there are some that are out there that are getting better, the technology, not that it's not there yet, it's just not there yet in landscape lighting. And I'm not saying it's never going to be, because we're even working on developing our own brand so that, you know, eventually we can have a solar light that's going to look like this, and eventually that will come. It's just, as of right now, what you're going to find at the big box store lights, this is what you're going to get as opposed to this. And another example of, you know, here's a really good quality uplight, accent light, as opposed to a solar light that you can get at the big box store. Yes, this costs way less than this does, but what are you trying to achieve? And again, you know, a beautiful pathway lit up with some great path lights, some really good quality ones from FX Luminaire, as opposed to you know, the solar lights, which, by the way, this is the same property. We actually just put in solar lights at the exact same spots that we had these lights, so that you could see even the lights in the back. You can see there's a huge difference, but their neighbor actually had these on their property, and the following year we went and took them all out and basically did this to their property also. So a few last helpful tips and things to remember is, you know, just try to light your property with as few lights as possible. You're not trying to land a plane. You don't want your house to stand out like crazy. And I mean, a lot of times you see these $1 million homes that the outside is just, it's crazy with the amount of lights that they've got in their soffits and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I don't know how much ego you need to have your house seen from space, but you don't need to do that. That's not what you're trying to achieve with landscape lighting. So I always say try to light as much as possible with as few lights as possible. And remember, you can always add on more, especially if you're going with LED. The technology is just so much better. The design flexibility to add on down the road is so much easier to do. And remember, you can accomplish a lot cooler effects by just thinking outside the box and being a little bit more creative with some accent lighting, some down lighting, than you can with just littering your property with path lighting. So always try and think of that. How can I light an area in different ways, and try it out and see how it looks. If you don't like it, you can always change it later too. Don't waste your money on solar lighting. The technology is just not there yet. Just spend the money up front, depending on what you're trying to achieve. If you're really not trying to light your landscape and you just want to have some lights, say you have some lights, then go ahead with solar lighting. But I would recommend just staying away from them for now. Eventually there will be some good options, but it's just not quite there yet. Using filters is a really cool thing you can do. You know, I got heck from some guy on YouTube the other day. It was all bent out of shape because I talked about color filters instead of some of the color lighting systems that are out there. And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of the color light systems that are out there, and we use them all the time. I have them at my house, and I can change my lights all kinds of different colors at Halloween, Christmas, and for different occasions. But cost-effective standpoint, they're still very, very expensive for what you get. They're 3 times what you would pay for just a good quality LED light and throwing a filter on it, because most people just want to change the color on the holidays or something like that. A filter is going to cost you a few bucks as opposed to having to pay 3 times as much. So Tony, I know you're upset because I said that we use color filters a lot of the times instead of color changing systems. That's why it's a cost thing. Most people are not going to pay, from experience, 3 times over for a system just to have color changing on it. So and then, yeah, if you're trying to compare LED to halogen, the color equivalent is 2700 to 3000 Kelvin. That's what it looks like. So if you're looking at an LED bulb and it says 4000 on it, just know you're getting that white light. If it says 2700 or 3000, that's that nice warm yellow light that you're used to. And with the drop-in bulbs, like I talked about, you can experiment a little bit with different beam spreads and stuff and see what looks good. And like I say, with any landscape lighting project, don't finalize anything until you see what it looks like. So whether you go around beforehand with a flashlight and shine a light on some areas to see what looks good, whether you take your light and attach the wires to just a 9-volt battery, should run a good LED light, and go walk around with that and see what looks good, or whether you put your lights in, turn them on, and then make some adjustments after the fact, and then go bury the wires the last thing you do the next day after you know that that's where you want the lights. Whatever you do, go and try some things out first before you finalize anything, because you potentially have that lighting system in for the next 10-15 years, so why not make it look great? And then lastly, if you do have a landscape lighting system, you're just looking to upgrade, get those halogen bulbs out of there, replace them with a good quality LED lamp that's going to use less power, it's going to last a lot longer, and it's going to give you some more design flexibility, where if you want to add more lights and you have a halogen system, it's going to be tough to do. If you go and retrofit those with good quality LED bulbs, chances are now you can add 4 times as many lights and not have to upgrade your transformer and a bunch of different things like that. So hopefully, guys, this has been a helpful video. I know it's a lot of information. I know it's sometimes a little dry and a little boring. We got tons of other videos on YouTube. Please do go and check them out.
Uplighting is the most dramatic type of landscape lighting. Let's review some basics. Trees are traditionally illuminated with uplights. with a special focus to ensure all areas of the tree are highlighted from the necessary viewing areas. Use long shrouds or hex baffles when the light source is visible to your general audience. Focus on lighting the trunk and branching structure of a tree instead of the leaves. Always ensure that the tree is properly pruned. Wall washes are a great option for shrubs, walls, and boulders. To add light while hiding the fixture, use in-grade lights. Don't forget to highlight the architectural features of a house. Uplights are the most impactful way to bring color into a landscape. By adding a few colors, uplights can create fun looks and themes. Let's recap some pathlight fundamentals. Traditionally, pathways are designed with pathlights. Stagger the placement of each fixture for a classic look, or align them evenly for a more modern look. Since pathlights are usually installed to enhance nighttime safety for pedestrians, spacing should be consistent along the entire path. When you have a tree or structure above the pathway, use downlights to bring a natural light to the area without drawing attention to the fixtures. If you have a high traffic area and you can't use downlights or pathlights, FX Luminaire also has in-grade lights and wall lights that wash the path. FX Luminaire has many traditional and contemporary fixtures to help you better match those fixtures to your landscape. Downlighting is the most natural lighting technique. Use downlights to softly illuminate gardens, shrubs, and landscape vegetation during the late evening and at night. Downlights installed in man-made structures like pavilions, gazebos, or trellises provide a nice light to high traffic areas. When you install downlights above a tree canopy, you can achieve a very dramatic moonlighting look with shadows. You can also use downlights to illuminate walkways or areas with changing elevation. Use the full range of FX Luminaire's downlights to create many elegant looks.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that, and as always, leave your questions below. We love answering those both on Facebook and YouTube. And if you haven't checked out yet, go to lightingdoctor.ca where you can see all our do-it-yourself kits, where everything you just watched in the video is all included in a couple different packages, so that you don't have to do all the headache of trying to find what the best lights are, what's going to last the longest, how to size your transformer and all that. We've done all that for you. And we've taken a bunch of different manufacturers, taken the best products that they have, and just bundled them together to create those easy to install kits for you that are just world class. So thanks so much for watching. Please follow us on YouTube and Facebook for more great tips, and we can't wait to hear from you. Thanks so much.
Boop.